Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be doing yet another manga unhaul video. I think in my last one, which was a few months ago, I said that that was my biggest manga unhaul before, but now this one I have about 100 volumes to show you, so this one's even bigger than the last one. I've been unhauling quite a lot of manga lately just because I'm running out of shelf space, and there were just some series that I read recently that had been on my shelves for years, and I finally gave them a try and realized they don't need to be on my shelves, so I very quickly got rid of those. So about half of the volumes I have to show you today are ones that I still have in my possession, and I'll show you the actual book. And the other half are ones I've already gotten rid of, so I'll just include a picture up here in the middle of the screen so you can tell what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to go into too much detail, just a brief description of why I unhauled it. Not everything on this list are manga that I disliked. Some of them have just been on my shelves and I don't think I'm going to reread them, or they weren't super memorable, so I'm just going to move on from them and have the shelf space instead. So let's go ahead and get started with some random volumes to start. The first one I've had on my shelves for quite a long time. This is Tropic of the Sea by Satoshi Kon. I read this a long time ago, and it was alright, but at this point, I don't really remember a lot of it, and I did also unhaul the other two Satoshi Kon works I had that I had not read, so Seraphim and then Dream Fossil I read a couple stories from, but it was not very good, so I unhauled those two as well. I do still have Opus. I have read that one, and I enjoyed it for the most part, so I'm holding on to that one. But Satoshi Kon, I don't really enjoy his manga for the most part, so I'm going to go ahead and unhaul this one as well. Next, I'm unhauling, or I have already unhauled, the first two omnibuses of Homunculus. I recently read the second volume. It was absolutely terrible. I will talk about it more in my wrap-up for October, but not enjoyable at all. So I very quickly unhauled that after finishing the second volume, and I'm not going to be reading any more of it. Next, I have a series that is almost completed, and I've been kind of enjoying this, but it's not super memorable, and I was going to wait for the final volume to come out before I decided to unhaul it, but then I realized there was really no point to that. If I already know it's not going to stay in my collection, I should just go ahead and unhaul the volumes I have. So I have Ex Yakuza and Stray Kitten Volume 2 and Volume 3. So there's one more volume of this. Volume 4 is the final volume. And this is cute, but I'm probably never going to think about it again after unhauling it. So there's no reason for it to stay in my collection. The next manga I'm unhauling, you can maybe tell from this gap right here, but that is Run on Your New Legs, Volumes 1 through 5. I did recently read this and I enjoyed it, but it didn't become a new favorite or anything. And as I was looking through my shelves for things to unhaul, I realized that I probably wasn't going to reread it, so I went ahead and unhauled it. Next, I have Be Very Afraid of Kanako Inaki. This is a short story collection from the horror genre. This one was okay. I know this has some pretty negative reviews. I didn't think it was that bad, but it is not very memorable, except for this cover is really memorable. So there's no reason to keep a manga just because I like the cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. And another horror manga I recently unhauled is Portis. I did recently read this again to decide if I was going to keep it. I pretty much had the same feelings I did the first time reading it, and again, I'm going to talk about this in my October Reads video, but it's not very good. And I knew that the first time, so I don't know why I held on to it for so long, but it's not fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and unhaul that one, or I did already. Next is a series I don't see very many people talking about at all, and so it's kind of disappointing that I'm unhauling it since, I don't know, I'm not sure how many people are picking this up from Seven Seas, but that series is The Valiant Must Fall. I bought this because it is by the same author as Gunslinger Girl, which I really enjoyed, but it's very different from that. Both series are historical, but they have very different settings. This one is more of kind of a fantasy. I have volume 2 as well, but this is very heavily historical. There's lots of little footnotes and author's notes and translators' notes that kind of give you context to the political situation that's happening at the time, but those are very tedious to read. It does not make for a smooth or enjoyable reading experience, so I'm going to go ahead and unhaul these as well. The next series I'm going to be unhauling is Record of Ragnarok, so I have volumes 1 through 7. I did read the first volume of this and I enjoyed it, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really need to have this on my shelves. It's basically just an action series. I did find the concept very entertaining with like gods versus humans. They're just fighting, so there's not a lot of interesting messaging going on here. It's just gods and humans fighting. It is interesting to see which gods and which famous historical humans they pick in here, but I don't need it on my shelves. It's not going to be a favorite ever. And I think I can read this digitally on one of the very many manga subscription platforms, so I will do that if I ever have the urge to read it again, or maybe Viz will put it up on their website to read. We'll see, but I don't need it in my collection anymore. The next manga I unhauled already, I was very on the fence about, but I don't think I'm ever going to reread it. I read it once, I got what it was trying to say, and that's pretty much enough for me, but that is Sensei's Pious Lie, so I had the entire series. I read it recently. This was a good manga, don't get me wrong. It was a good, well-done manga, but I just don't think I need it on my shelves. I'm probably not going to reread it in the future, and I need the shelf space, so I went ahead and unhauled that already. I also unhauled my collector's editions of A Silent Voice because, as you can see, I have the single editions right here, and that is a fantastic series, and that's why I bought the collector's editions. But I realized that if I'm ever going to reread this series, I'm probably just going to read my singles, so there is really no reason for me to have the collector's edition except for to have them to show off. And I really need the shelf space because that is where my hardcover collection is, and my hardcover collection is getting very big, and so I needed that shelf space. And that, combined with the fact that I don't even like the covers of the collector's edition that much, I just went ahead and unhauled that, giving myself some more space for some other oversized hardcover volumes that I would rather read. Again, this has nothing to do with the actual series, it's just the physical release of the collector's edition that I have unhauled. Obviously, I still have the series on my shelves right there. Next, I think this one might be the most surprising manga on this list, but there's another gap right here, and if you can tell which shelf this is, maybe you can figure out what manga this is, but it doesn't matter, I'm just going to show you anyway. So that series is Blue Lock. So I have volumes 1 through 8 of Blue Lock, and I do really like these very colorful covers. And I do enjoy this series, however, I don't think I need to own it. My local library has all of the volumes available digitally, including ones that have not yet been released in English physically. So I think they're through volume like 13 or 15 or something like that. They're a little bit ahead of the physical English releases. So if I ever want to read this again, which I've only read through volume 9 or 10, I read that on the K-Manga app. Actually, I think it was through volume 11. But if I ever want to read it again or continue reading, I'll just read it that way or through the K-Manga app. I don't need to own this. This is not a series that I'm like super emotionally attached to. It's definitely entertaining, don't get me wrong, but all of my favorite sports manga are ones that I become like emotionally attached to, and this one is not really doing that for me, but it is fun. But just because a series is fun doesn't mean it needs to stay on my shelves forever. Next is actually another sports series that I recently unhauled, and that is One Dance. I had volumes 1 through 5, I believe. This is one I was on the fence about pretty much since volume 3. It wasn't going in a direction that I loved. It's not a team-based sports manga, it's really an individual-based sports manga. And usually I tend to prefer the team-based ones, so I'd already had that not going for it. And there's some competitions happening right now, and I'm not loving it. And if I'm not loving a sports manga, then there's really no reason for me to keep it. I know lots of people do really enjoy this series, and that's great. The art is really nice, but for me, I wasn't loving it, so I went ahead and unhauled that one. The next manga, I'm not even sure I talked about this on my channel, but I read this a couple months ago, and it was alright. But that was Double. So I have volumes 1 through 4. They're all the volumes that are out right now in English. I don't know what's going on with the series, if it's on hiatus or what, but there's no set release date for volume 5, and there hasn't been for a while, to my knowledge. I read these, and I definitely enjoyed the first 2 volumes. It's a very interesting manga about acting and kind of toxic friendships, which is not explored that much in manga, at least from ones I've read. And it was definitely interesting, but then volumes 3 and 4 were not as good, and because it is so slow to release, I really have no idea when volume 5 is going to come out. Maybe if the series continues and I've heard really good things about it, then I will pick it back up maybe, but that's unlikely, so this one is leaving the collection for that reason. Next, I have The Case Files of Jeweler Richard. I feel like I already talked about this, but I unhauled the 5 volumes of this series I had because I did not like it really at all. Definitely not for me. It was pretty slow paced, and it was supposed to be a kind of mystery manga, but the mystery wasn't very intriguing, and it's pretty episodic. So I just didn't enjoy it, so I unhauled it. Next, I have Boy Meets Maria. This is an LGBT one-shot that I read, and it was pretty good, but at this point, I'm probably never going to read it again. And so I left it on my shelves because I do like to keep and hold on to my LGBT manga, but again, I'm not going to read it again, and I need more space on that shelf for sure, so I'm unhauling this one. Next, I have volumes 1 through 7 of Ten Dance. I recently talked about this. I was pretty disappointed by this one, but I know that there are other people who enjoy this for sure, and again, I've already unhauled it, obviously, so hopefully the person that got it enjoys it more than I did. And next, I have some other BL manga. One of these I've read, the other ones I have not read. These are all from Tokyo Pop, and I used to pick up most of the LGBT manga that came out because there weren't a lot of them, but now there are so many to choose from that I don't need to be picking up every single one that releases. I can be kind of more choosy with the ones I pick up. So I'm going to go ahead and unhaul these ones. So the first one I have read, that is There Are Things I Can't Tell You. This one I remember being okay, but I didn't love it. And it's just a one-shot, and honestly, Tokyo Pop spines are so ugly. So that's kind of the reason I'm unhauling it, but I'm probably never going to read this again. It wasn't super memorable. And these other ones I have not yet read, but honestly, I don't think I'm going to. So next is Scram Blues. This is one that I bought because I think it has like band elements, and the characters are actually adults. So that's why I bought this, but I looked up reviews. I'm probably not going to like it. It doesn't seem to be super memorable for people who do read it. And then I have two more that are of similar circumstances. So I have Koi Monogatari Volume 1 and Volume 2. Look at these spines. Come on. It just doesn't look nice on the shelf at all. So I, again, haven't read these ones, but I did look up reviews. They don't seem to be incredibly well regarded. So I'm going to go ahead and unhaul them. I need the shelf space. And then lastly is a huge bulk of this unhaul. I'm glad I already got rid of it. It did sit on my unhaul pile for a while, but that is Angel Sanctuary Volumes 1 through 20, which I did recently attempt to read, semi-recently, and it was not amazing, so I unhauled that one. And then the other works from the same author, I read reviews again, and I think that they would go in a similar way, so I'm probably not going to love them. So that was Godchild Volumes 1 through 8, and then the Kane Saga Volumes 1 through 5. So that was a lot of shelf space I freed up with those series, so I'm disappointed that I didn't like Angel Sanctuary, but I am not upset about having the shelf space back again. So yeah, those are all the manga I got rid of recently. Well, most of them. I don't talk about all the manga I haul or unhaul, but just some of the highlights, or lowlights maybe, I guess. But yeah, if you have any thoughts about anything I unhauled recently, please let me know those comments down below, or let me know what you've unhauled recently. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!